Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and exploring what the issues are and what the solutions could be together. I like to say many hands make a light load, and I'm really excited about this opportunity to gather everybody together. I am going to be presenting with my colleague Zeno Bain, who's the sustainability advisor for the Virgin Islands, and we're excited to share with you some of the overarching views of what's happening a little bit in the VI, and also sort of nationally and globally. Next slide, please. So our EPA Sustainable Materials Management hierarchy focuses on source reduction and reuse. That's our highest level of the hierarchy. So wherever possible, reduce the amount of material wastes that are being generated. And that is the highest, and those yield the maximum environmental and public health benefits. Reuse is sort of our next level of the hierarchy, and that can be repair, resale, repair, repurposing, and so forth. Then recycling and composting are the next level. So that would be taking materials in their form, let's say plastic, and melting them down and creating new plastic. Ideally, it's better to not even have to go through that processing step. So that's why it's below reuse in terms of the hierarchy. And composting is also considered part of recycling, where you're taking organic material and it's breaking down and forming nutrients. Energy recovery is next. That could be anaerobic digestion or biodiesel. And then treatment and disposal, this is the least preferred. This is like basically landfilling, where you're really losing the valuable natural resources and embodied energy in those in the original materials. Next slide, please. I think you're all probably quite familiar with some of the materials management issues in the VI. Of course, there was some long delayed program approval, but the USVI has program approval now. So this enables the VI to expand existing landfills, create new landfills, use alternative daily cover, and a variety of other operational flexibilities that are afforded to states with RCRA Subtitle D Municipal Solid Waste Landfill Permit Program Approval. I know that's a mouthful. As you know, there's only two existing disposal locations. They're both subject to various enforcement orders. They're at or almost at or over capacity, and they have operational challenges. That's why the program approval was so important, because now we can sort of start fresh and create new cells or new landfills that hopefully will have maximum waste diversion, so they will last for a long time. But that's going to take all of us working together. And in the past, there have been limited waste diversion programs, and we're certainly going to all work together on that. I know that the Waste Management Authority is working diligently at finding alternatives for all these different materials, and we're all working together on that. And we look to the public as well for any ideas. Historic underfunding. Congress had originally intended for solid waste to be a state-run program, so we don't provide the same level of funding that we do for some of the other programs like water and hazardous waste. So that's why it's so important to have a steady funding stream, which I think Waste Management is going to talk about a little bit later in terms of user fees or tipping fees. And then here we have no tipping fees, or there's no source, or there hasn't been no source of sustainable revenue to maintain and expand the materials management operations in the VI. So these are some of the issues. And we're next slide, please. So I know this is a long list. I'm just going to quickly go through. We've been providing technical assistance and funding where we can. Primarily, we've been working with DP&R, Waste Management, the Housing and Finance Authority, which administers the HUD CDBG Community Development Block Grant funding, the Office of Disaster Recovery, and the University of Virgin Islands, of course. We approved the landfill permit program in 2019. We're responsible for ensuring federal landfill standards, minimum landfill standards that are codified in 40 CFR Part 258 are complied with. We provide technical guidance, and this is one area where we're heavily focused right now, the $10 million supplemental grant to USVI and DPNR. After Hurricane Maria, as you know, there was a lot of federal funding that came to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, and it was divvied up amongst all the different agencies. EPA received a portion of that money and has allocated $10 million to help support sustainable materials management, and that's being divided between DPNR and waste management. So we're assisting with the development of those programs through that grant program. We maintain a sustainability advisor with which is Zeno Bain. He's on the call, and you'll be hearing from him in the Virgin Islands. We have funded and assist with the development of the UVI waste characterization study, which we'll go into a little bit later, and we'll also have a deeper dive in our subsequent webinar. We did a VI commodities market analysis. We're now calling it.
Kimiko, your sound is getting a little bit distorted.
Oh, I'm not sure. Can you hear me now?
Not very well, but keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. Where was I? I'm sorry. We're assisting FEMA with the public assistance and hazard mitigation funding of solid waste activities. With UVI is responsible for that. We're coordinating with the HUD CDBG disaster recovery and mitigation funding. And we're trying to revive RECARIB, which was the wider Caribbean Solid Waste Management Association. We're working with other islands to help crowdsource ideas of sustainable materials management from around the world and see what might be possible in the VI. Exploring the intersectionality of sectors and symbiotic collaborative opportunities like constructed wetlands for wastewater and anaerobic digestion. And we're trying to assist with the development of the USVI Integrated Sustainable Materials Management Plan. Next slide, please. Hello.
So now Zeno will be talking about his role as sustainability officer. Is he on the call? Zeno.
Sorry, I needed to hit
okay.
*6, so now I'm unmuted. So
okay,
good afternoon.
Great.
This is Zeno Bain. I'm the Sustainability Advisor for EPA, supporting FEMA disaster recovery efforts. I've been in the territory in the VI, in St. Croix specifically for the last year and a half. And as you can see on this slide here, there's a number of areas that we work on to support disaster recovery. So I won't go into details on each of these priorities, and there's a number of partners that we work with in the territory. I think the main point, and Kimiko touched on a couple of the primary sources of funding that's supporting sustainable materials management, such as funding for siting and opening a new landfill, funding from EPA for composting, recycling. But I think the main point I want to show in these other areas that you see here on the slide is that there's a number of other opportunities to reduce materials going to the landfill, reduce waste, and recycle waste. And through the work with federal partners in disaster recovery, there's a number of other funding sources. So we also, not included on this slide, but I also work with the federal partners that are supporting disaster recovery, and some of those have been mentioned, such as Economic Development Association, EDA, USDA, Department of Interior. So these are some of the federal agencies that have, you know, a number of programs to support the territory, not just through the direct ways that we just mentioned, but also through technical capacity assistance, and potentially other potential funding sources to support composting, recycling, waste diversion. But also what I'd like to mention is that in the work as sustainability advisor, as we increase sustainability in these other sectors, as you see here, for example, the built environment or utilities, and you know, we see the power poles being installed, the newer power poles that should be more resilient to the hurricanes. And as we continue to increase resilience in, you know, our utilities, the wastewater lines, even the coral reefs to mitigate storm surge, and other methods to reduce sort of redundant projects that create more waste through collaboration. So there's a number of ways that we may not immediately think about for, you know, reducing and diverting waste from the landfill. And some of those things we can think about, and I can think about and try to promote through the other projects that we work on in increasing sustainability, as you can see in this list here. So I think that's it that I have here on this slide. I think just wanted to recap, and the following slide here recaps some of the funding sources that we've talked about. I think we've touched on the $10 million assistance for solids waste management going to DP&R and waste management. And you can see some of the other funding sources from EPA for the Superfund program and the underground storage tank, which are not directly, as I mentioned, but could have benefits for increasing resiliency. And the Clean Water Act construction grants, again, and also not directly for sustainable materials management, but I wanted to include these for you so you can see some of the other work that we're doing, again, in just increasing resiliency in the territory. The main one, of course, that's listed here is the HUD CDBG funding, the Community Development Fund, and which is the 1.8 billion. And of that, Kimiko touched on the funding that's being allocated for the landfill. So again, I touched on it previously, some of the other programs through EDA and USDA that can assist in how they may increase resilience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now Kimiko is going to go through a few of pictures of a few of the different programs to highlight. But I just wanted to point out to Kimiko that we only have 2 minutes for this. So
yes, I will
Okay.
definitely pick up the pace. Next slide, please. So we're working with the Office of Disaster Recovery on the disaster debris planning efforts to update the disaster debris plan with Michael Vante and his fabulous colleagues and at ODR and the Department of Public Works and Waste Management and VITEMA. So thank you all for that. A revised version will be coming up soon. Next slide, please. The waste characterization study. This is phenomenal work by University of Virgin Islands, and that will be out shortly. But this was a deep dive into the residential waste stream in the USVI, and we'll be highlighting that in the next webinar next week. And this one, the materials management analysis. So this looked at the waste characterization report and explored opportunities all over the that are happening all over the world in terms of how people are using these materials in a more sustainable way. So that's going to be an exciting discussion. And I just wanted to show the what's happening here on the right. Everything, a lot of these materials most of these materials are going to the landfill. So the question is, how can we capture these resources, which are valuable commodities that can preserve resources, create green jobs, and help build resilience and sustainability? So a lot of this is incorporated into that report. And again, that's next week. So please join us for next week. Next slide, please. And in that report, we looked at a number of different things. I won't go through it here, but we tried to put as many metrics as possible in terms of opportunities that those materials represent. Next slide, please. We're trying to move from what is a linear economy right now, from production, consumption, and disposal, to a circular economy, and how we can have those materials keep cycling through our materials management stream to provide maximum benefit and maximum opportunity. Next slide, please. And some of the things we also evaluated are the opportunity of, or the possibility of having a reuse innovation center in the VI. We would be able to capture a lot of the materials that are currently going to the landfill and possibly repairing them, reselling them, redesigning them, repurposing them. There'll be a classroom, potentially a classroom, and an art space. The food recovery hierarchy, I put this on because we are investing a lot of effort to capturing the organics, the food waste, as well as the green waste. And with the food waste, we're definitely trying to feed hungry people, feed animals, explore industrial uses like anaerobic digestion, explore composting to replenish the soil, and provide engineering, erosion control, and filtration. Next slide, please. We had a sustainable materials management island speaker series, and we had, you can look through these later, but we had speakers from all over the world, and we're going to be highlighting that in the third webinar and all that we learned from islands across the world. Next slide, please. We have a grant to Island Green Living and Build Reuse to work on building a deconstruction training program. So that should be hopefully starting soon. The pandemic has put things a little bit on hold, but look for some opportunities to participate in that and learn how to deconstruct and reuse those materials rather than sending them to the landfill. Next slide, please. ReCarib, this is the Wider Caribbean Solid Waste Management Association. We're trying to help resuscitate this and join forces with potentially with our Pacific neighbors and many islands across the world to see how we can all help share resources, come up with best management practices, and find solutions together. Next slide, please. And that's it. That's my contact information. Zeno's contact information is the bain.zeno@epa.gov. And thank you so much for your time. Many hands make a light load, and I encourage you to stay engaged and participate in the upcoming webinars. Thank you.
Thank you